The Hog Sty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsty.com.
By fans, for fans, the Hog Sty. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Welcome to the Hog Sty, DC's unofficial leading source for all things Redskins and the NFL. The Hog Sty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, and hopefully you've been sticking with us because we've got all kinds of shows live now, including Seasons of Discontent with Rick Snyder and Matt Cones, and It's Just Business, which just had its 52nd episode. Both of these and more over at thehogsty.com. So make sure you're checking that out. My name's Sean Conti. I got Steve Thomas and Jamal Forrest with me. How are you guys doing today on this beautiful Saturday?
I'm hanging in there, man. I heard in terms of Seasons of Discontent, I've heard Little Birdie told me they might start getting some guests on that show.
Hey.
Yeah, and if we get pretty good guests on this show, but Rick Snyder is a professional writer. He's been doing it for a long time, so he's going to get whatever guests we get, his are going to be just as good or better. So stay tuned with that one.
That's right. We're going to be playing second fiddle on our own website over here,
yeah,
Steve,
that
pretty
may be true.
soon.
He's going to end up getting, with, the quarterback or something on the.
No, we just got to keep up, man. That's all we got to do.
That's true.
He's right. Jamal's right. We got to kick it into hyperdrive here.
That's true.
Well, what's that, Steve?
I said, no, that's true. We have to kick it into hyperdrive.
Yeah, well, we'll find a way. So hopefully you've been checking that out. We've got all kinds of new content, like we said. Lots of changes happening here at the Hog Sty. But it's kind of a slow news week this week. There's not much going on in the land of the Redskins.
What's going on?
Yeah,
everybody
exactly.
Excited about that. I'm excited, man. 1 week to go.
Yeah.
I've read every spoiler.
Look.
Have you really?
Yeah, I read all
How'd you do
of
that to yourself?
Let me tell you something. This is kind of, it's not dark, but it's in the sense of, it just sucks for some people. But it's like, I told myself, I said, bro, I pray to God that I'm able to live to see this whole thing through. Like, I waited this long in life for this season to come about. I want to see everything happen. Mm-hmm. I need to see this whole thing through. Like, if God has plans for me, please wait until this season is over. All right, I need the whole season, and this is just something that everybody loves it. Like, it's hard to really dislike it, and people who go out their way to make people know that they dislike it you're a certain type of evil and corny. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, I give credit to primarily Sean, Alex, and Robbie Duncan for getting me into Game of Thrones in the first place. Because when we started the show, I had been watching it, and you guys kept preaching it.
It's persistence.
The spoiler of the type of spoilers that I have read, there is an entire outline of episode 1 now.
Wow.
Yeah, which I...
Is it
well, I did,
can you believe it? Is it real? Do you think it's real?
Yeah.
Hold on. Say it again, Steve.
The type of spoilers, because I've read all these spoilers and everything. There was an outline of season 1 this week that came out. from the guy who leaked
Of episode
season 7 and was 100% accurate about it, put out an outline.
No.
Yeah, so I won't say what it is, of course, but I kind of wish I hadn't read it in that level of detail. I don't mind kind of reading the spoilers, but that was a little bit. That was kind of next level.
So he broke down this season.
No, just the first episode.
Oh, just the first.
He meant episode 1.
Yeah. But the funny thing was about it, though, then he came out after that and said that he's not going to do any more episodes because HBO threatened to sue him, which tells you that what he put out was
so
right.
let me ask this then. So the guy who put out the first episode spoiler, now is it because you're not saying anything per se with what I'm about to ask you, but is what he told you, like, is it something where death is involved or like something just like revealing or something to that extent, if that makes sense?
I mean,
because I don't want to put words.
I don't know how to say it without. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to say it without ruining it for people. I mean,
if we spoil Game of Thrones on the Hog Sty podcast, we will never be forgiven. Steve.
Yeah, I know. So
never be forgiven.
Jamal, I'll talk to you off the air. How about that?
Oh my goodness. Okay, that works.
All I want to say, I don't mind spoiling the idea that I read the spoiler, but I don't want to say what it is.
So I will say this though. Steve, if you end up telling me something that I don't want to hear,
then why did you ask?
All I want to know, I don't want to know the details about something. I just want to know, like, if somebody dies, if something happens, like, to that extent. You don't have to tell me who dies. You don't have to tell me anything, like, in particular. I just want the vagueness that involves around episode 1. But if
I'll tell you off the air. Once we get off, I'll tell you. I don't want to.
But if it's something specific, I'm telling everybody that's listening now. You will hear from me on Twitter. I will tell you exactly what he told me because I didn't ask for it.
Because if you add up all the spoilers I've read, I kind of have an outline of the season in my head. I just don't know the details, but I do know the details of episode 1.
Okay, all right, we'll wait.
Maybe our poll this week should be who do you think's going to die in episode 1 of Game of Thrones? There's not freaking much else going on in the land of the Redskins.
Yeah, I mean, problem is Twitter only gives 4 options, and that could be like 20 different people.
Anyone.
Yeah.
It could be anyone and everyone. You're right. All right, well, speaking of polls, we have a poll this week, do we not? Maybe we should jump into that.
You want to do the interview first?
Yeah, we can do an interview first. Okay, so to let people know what's up, Steve and Jamal, and I think Alex as well, did an interview on Wednesday of this week with Jordan Reid, not that Jordan Reid, but Jordan Reid, REID, of cover1.net and the Draft Board podcast. Super awesome guy. But you guys did that interview on Wednesday, and we can just kind of cut over to that right now, and we'll come right back after it. So let's do that.
All right, joining us today, we have Jordan Reid, writer for cover1.net, self-proclaimed All-22 junkie, and a host of his own podcast, Time in the Pocket, and pretty much a doer of all things, so to speak. Jordan, how you doing today?
Hey, man, how you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. I'm doing good. But Steve, I got Steve with me, and I got Alex with me. Sean, again, for everybody that's listening, we don't know where he is, the mystery man. But
we have a fourth host who just never shows up for any interviews. It's been uncanny for like the past month.
For whatever reason, he shuns us when it comes to guests. I don't understand it, but I think he thinks he's too good for us. But we'll live without him. But anyway, Jordan, man, of course, like when it comes to new guests for any show, just like last week, we had a new guest for the listeners. Everybody is not familiar with everybody. But tell us about yourself, man. Tell us how you came to becoming really good at what you do. How'd you become on so many platforms? And just give the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I really started scouting in 2014. I believe it was. That really was my first year actually getting into scouting. And, I played football previously. I was a Division I quarterback my previous playing days. I also coached in my previous tenure as well. So I have a well-diverse background in football and football in general. So just as far as understanding the game, that's really where I got my knowledge of the game from. But I always enjoyed learning other guys' stories. And I've always had an affinity with the NFL draft, even going back to when I was little. I used to just sit in front of the TV and just watch all 7 rounds back when the draft really was only 2 days. So just how tedious that process was, but I just always enjoyed sitting in front of the TV and just watching all 7 rounds every single year. So everyone used to call me Mr. ESPN when I was little, just because I used to know every guy's name and every guy's backstory. So writing, I really started that in 2014 as well, and I started as a Minnesota Vikings writer. It's actually the team that I am a fan of, and I just started and I worked my way up from that, just writing about the Vikings, basically as kind of not an official beat writer for them, but just working for side blogs. And I always wanted to interact with all 32 teams, and that's how I really got involved in NFL draft writing. And I actually started my Twitter account about 3 years ago now, so my following really has picked up since that point, and then posting videos and just doing bios on players and just tweeting endlessly. That's really how my platform really came to grow over time, and here I am now.
Hey, we understand that because we all started just kind of doing the same thing, loving talking about our Redskins, and you just start doing blogs, and doing podcasts, and having fun with it, and go from there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So where'd you play ball at, man? I'm a little curious, man. I love to hear the quarterbacks and football players, and get some insight on them in the college game.
Yeah, so I actually played a small school. I played a school called North Carolina Central. I was a 3-year starter there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a 3-year starter there. I'm actually from a small town called High Point, North Carolina. I'm sure you guys have heard of Durham, North Carolina before. Sure. It's right where Duke is, about 5 minutes away from Duke. So I was a 3-year starter there, worked my way up there, had a lot of fun, set some records there. My stats weren't all that great, so don't go researching them or anything like that.
So I'll close my Google search right now then.
My completion percentage record still does stand there, though. I'm actually pretty proud about that. But, yeah, I was a 3-year starter there, and that's really where I play ball at.
All right, one quick question. I know we got you for a short amount of time, but did y'all play against Morgan State or any HBCUs?
Yeah, we actually did. My junior year, we played against Morgan State, and
that's my alma mater, man. I gotta know how you did.
I have a funny story about that game. I actually played on one leg against them. I had a knee contusion that game, and I wasn't supposed to play. Yeah, I wasn't supposed to play, but I went out and played, and I actually got Conference Player of the Week after playing them. I led a game-winning drive to seal the game against them in 2012, I believe it was. So that's like my one shining moment during my career.
well, look, man, you're our guest. I gotta say congratulations, even though it was against my alma mater. But congratulations, man.
Thanks.
But so let's go ahead and get right into it. We understood that you had a podcast recently in which you, Steve had pointed out to me actually that you mentioned Cody Ford, and it's kind of interesting because this week we did our offensive line previews for the Hog Sty, and Cody Ford was one of the guys you mentioned in terms of possibilities for the Redskins. If you don't mind, can you just speak on your thoughts about Cody Ford and also the potential guys that you feel like may fit with the Redskins round one, if it makes sense?
Yeah, so just speaking on Cody Ford, he's actually a top 25 player for me in this draft, and I know a lot of people have gone back and forth about him, but you talk about a guy that's an absolute tone setter up front, and that's exactly what he provides. He's only been a 1-year starter. Now, he did suffer some time, or he missed some time with the broken ankle, I believe it was, during his sophomore year. So prior to this year, when he did take over for Orlando Brown Jr. at that right tackle spot, previously he did play left guard. So he has that experience, especially with the hole that the Redskins do have on the roster right now. And I just don't think it would be smart for them to entrench Eric Flowers as the starter at that left guard spot. And I know he's fired up and excited about playing for Bill Callahan, but we all know he is what he is at this point. Let's just be honest about that. And I think he's only a depth piece at this point. So bringing in Cody Ford for competition with Eric Flowers at that left guard spot to be beside Chase Roulier, and then between him and Trent Williams, I think that could be vital for the Redskins, and they have to find a way to protect whoever the quarterback of the future is going to be. Now with Case Keenum and Colt McCoy, that's what the competition is going to be between the quarterback of the now. But I think at that 15 slot, they're really kind of in a difficult situation because I think they're on the exterior of getting the top 3 guys, Dwayne Haskins, Kyler Murray, and Drew Lock. I think all 3 of those guys are going to go top 10. So if they want their quarterback of the future, I think they're gonna have to trade up for that guy. But I think the wild card in all of this is Josh Rosen. And me personally, I would give up the 15th selection for Josh Rosen just because I don't think they're going to be able to get any of the top 3 guys, and I'm just not willing to invest the 15th overall selection in Daniel Jones.
So, in terms of if it was to play out that way, just say we were to make that move for either for a quarterback, Daniel Jones. We hope that's not the case, or
Yeah, no, I think you're kind of preaching the choir there.
yeah,
No one really gets excited
We've been
about
talking
that.
about that on this show for weeks.
yeah,
Yeah.
giving us headaches. But Josh Rosen, Daniel Jones, that's the least likely desired. But say we were to go quarterback route, were there any guards that came to mind for you that you actually liked? And again, Cody Ford, you mentioned would be a good fit for a he's a top 25 player in your opinion in this draft. But any mid-round picks, maybe second round, maybe even third to fourth that makes sense. Some of the people that we had mentioned this week was I don't know where you find them, but Chris Lindstrom, Boston College, Chuma Edoga, Southern Cal, and even what's the other guy that we mentioned? Michael Dieter of Wisconsin. Does any of these guys stand out to you at all, or are there any other options?
Yeah, I mean, I think all three of those guys that you listed are viable options. Chris Lindstrom, who started over 45 games at Boston College, was very dependable, one of the best players in program history. I think he's played mostly right guard and right tackle when he was at Boston College, so flipping him over to the left side, that may be a new challenge for him, but I think it's something that he could pick up on. And I think he's probably going to go with the top 50 selection, so he could be there for the choosing if the Redskins decide to take that type of route. And another name that you guys did not mention that I think could be an option in the second or even the third round is Drew Samia from Oklahoma, who was also on the offensive line with Cody Ford, and also Connor McGovern from Penn State. I think that also could be two viable options in the second or even the third round if they do want to address the interior offensive line.
Jordan, it's Steve. The other guy you were talking about in your Redskins podcast from last week, in terms of round one, was A.J. Brown, the wide receiver. And, we've been preaching on this show for, ever. It seems like that they need playmakers. He's certainly one. I'm wondering what you see with A.J. Brown's role, given that Paul Richardson is here. Is A.J., does he become the slot guy? Is he sort of assuming Paul Richardson's role as the Z guy? How exactly would Brown fit here if they went A.J. Brown?
Yeah, and the good thing about A.J. Brown is that you don't have to force him into one position, I don't think, because he can play in the slot or he can play in the boundary at the X receiver spot. Now, that's what he predominantly played at Ole Miss. He primarily dominated in the slot. And he's a guy that I like to say dominates in between the hashes. And with the Redskins now with Jamison Crowder out the door, they need a guy that can dominate in the shorts and underneath or intermediate type of areas. And that's exactly what A.J. Brown can do and what he can bring to the table. So at that X spot, you have Josh Dotson. At the Z, you have Paul Richardson, that guy that can be your roof stretcher. And then you have the guy dominate underneath in A.J. Brown. So I think targeting him maybe in the second round, I think that could be a viable option for the Redskins. And the good thing about A.J. Brown is that he's a perfect fit for this wide receiver core because they're really lacking that guy underneath now that Crowder has gone to the Jets.
Yeah, of course, the other big thing here is who's going to throw. Who's going to throw to these guys. We have Keenum, yes. Let's pretend though the Redskins don't go quarterback in round one, and so we've got a bunch of mid-round guys like Finley, Jarrett Stidham, Will Greer, and some others. Give us some names of some mid-round guys you think might fit.
Yeah, and I think that's headlined by Will Greer, and he's starting to catch some steam here soon or lately because of just how well he performed at his pro day and how well he threw at the combine. So with Will Greer, something you have to understand is that he's a quarterback that's really only going to be as good as the sum of his parts. He's not a quarterback that's going to uplift his supporting cast. So you have to have some weapons around him and a really strong running game, which is something that I think the Redskins will have next year, whether that's Adrian Peterson or I'm excited about Darius Geis coming back from his ACL injury too. So just having that dynamic duo behind Will Greer, I think that definitely could be a viable option, but I just don't think he's a significant upgrade over what they already have on the roster because I think the two guys that are on the roster, I think that's really his ceiling, and that's not a knock against him. I just think he resembles some similar qualities to Colt McCoy and Case Keenum. So maybe they do wait to take a Will Greer or a Ryan Finley in those mid-rounds, but Brett Rippon could be another guy that they do target, and I know you guys probably hate this name, but he reminds you a lot of Kirk Cousins. coming out, and I think that's probably
Oof.
that's probably his ceiling. And I think he's a guy that resembles a lot of qualities that Kirk Cousins did have coming out. So Will Greer and Rippon are definitely two names to keep an eye on.
Well, Redskins fans, there's a
Love
wing of us,
Rippon.
including myself, who, just because of his name, we want Rippon.
Well,
So,
I think I'm the lone voice against Rippon, Jordan. I mean, what I see in Rippon, I watch this film and I see a guy who struggles with his arm talent. I'm not sure he's going to be able to throw into tight windows in the pros, and I love the name Rippon and everything, but he concerns me. It looks like it takes his whole body to strain to even get any velocity on the ball.
Yeah, and that's the biggest deficiency with him right now. That's why I said he's going to have some really good weapons around him, very similar to Kirk Cousins, because he's not a guy he doesn't have that innate escapability like some of the other quarterbacks in this class. So he's going to have a lot of protection, and he's only going to be as good as the sum of his parts. And he's going to go as a supporting cast. And I think the Redskins, I would say a strong supporting cast, but they do have some promising pieces in spots, but they do need some upgrades overall in their supporting cast. And I think if you do take a guy like a Will Greer or a Brett Rippon, you're going to have to upgrade some of those spots on the perimeter.
you're being nice. Our receiving core is kind of garbage.
Yeah, I'm about to say you're being very nice. Like your mention of Eric Flowers, I wanted to say something then. You are a kind person, sir. I'll tell you that much. But so look, I do have a question. Since you mentioned Rippon already, I just want to get your opinion on two players in particular. If you have an opinion on them, specifically Ryan Finley of NC State and Tyree Jackson of Buffalo. Now, for some reason, I haven't heard much in terms of the Redskins and Tyree Jackson. Obviously, when it comes to Gruden's scheme, I'm not even sure if it makes complete sense. But just overall, in your opinion, in case it does happen with Jackson, and also, what are your thoughts on Ryan Finley as well?
Yeah, I mean, Jackson's the definition of what everyone likes to label as a boomer bust type of prospect, and he's that large project every team and every coaching staff really falls in love with. And I had an opportunity to go down to the Senior Bowl and actually watch him very in depth. And it was really promising to see how much he got better in just those 3 practices and even in the games.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be a classic case of a guy that does get overdrafted. And a lot of people are projecting him to go in the 4th or 5th round, but I think he's going to go much earlier than that, just because the guy that's 6'7", 250 pounds that can absolutely sling it. I think those guys necessarily don't last that long because of the physical traits that he does possess, and he's a guy compared to Cam Newton. And I'm not saying he has the ceiling or he's going to turn out to be the player that Cam Newton is, but they have a lot of similar qualities, and something that you have to understand up front about Tyree Jackson is that he's never going to be a quarterback that is a consistent 60% completion percentage type of passer, similar to Cam Newton, maybe 1 or 2 years throughout their career. But overall, he's never going to be that guy that meets that 60% threshold because he doesn't have pinpoint accuracy or anything like that, but he has the arm strength to overcompensate to get the ball in those throwing windows. And he has that promise that you're looking for in a prototypical type of project, type of quarterback. So if he's able to go to a team that can sit him maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe you can have a long-term starter in the future. But on the flip side, it wouldn't surprise me if he does end up changing position. That's just the type of project that he is. So you really don't know what's going to happen with Tyree Jackson. Me personally, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Tyree Jackson. I like him overall, but I'd be very cautious if I was a team drafting.
It'd be so tempting as a coach to put a 6'7" guy as a receiver just because of the mismatches.
Dude,
I can
end.
understand that. Yeah, tight end, receiver, something like that. I want to see him doing everything. I want to see him use like the Saints use their backup quarterback and just have him do everything.
Yeah, and it's a situation where he could end up being, I don't want to say Cam Newton, let's just say a poor man's version of Cam Newton, or he could end up being Logan Thomas. But that just goes to show you the type of boomer bust type of prospect he is.
But he's just a physical specimen to begin with, and then he can throw the ball, which makes it even more dangerous.
Well, Jordan, it looked like when I watched Tyree Jackson, his mechanics are sort of all over the place, and it looked to me like it was because he's so long and gangly. He just doesn't, and he's not ever going to have a compact throwing motion.
And he played in Buffalo, where they're not worrying about it.
Yeah.
Well,
he definitely has. He has a very weird throwing motion. That's the first thing that you really do notice about him. And another thing that he really does struggle with is processing speed. He sees routes in a delayed pace, and that's something that really worries me about him. And with him, he tries to overcompensate so many things. He wants to show off his arm strength at times to where he's just misreading so much stuff. But he's able to use his arm strength as a crutch to still fit the ball in there.
It's funny you say that because I don't have nearly your expertise in this, and I thought he looked a lot better at the combine, and so the processing speed issue really isn't much of an issue at the combine, so that's probably why I thought he looked better than he does on film.
Yeah, and I mean, like I alluded to earlier, at the Senior Bowl, it was really nice to see how much he got better in that time span, and that really led me to the conclusion that a team was probably going to overdraft him in maybe the second or the third round just because of that short time span that he did show growth.
So one thing, because we want to move on from the quarterback position, but we understand that you have your history with the Minnesota Vikings. You have a year with Case Keenum. We've been trying to get some help with this position and this player in particular for a little while now. And seeing as though you've seen him live for an entire season, a season in which y'all went to the NFC Championship game. What is your overall opinion on Case Keenum itself? Like the Redskins. Now we know the Redskins do need some help at the quarterback position. They're not done at that position itself. However, they are looking forward to the competition between Case and Colt. I don't believe Colt is going to win this, to be honest with you. I'm not going to lie to you. So I'm just assuming that Case will be that week one starter. What can we expect from Case? And what do you think he does best versus what does the Redskins have to protect in terms of his weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, just go ahead and buckle up. I will say that it's going to be a bumpy ride. There's going to be a whole bunch of no. Oh, good job, Case. There's going to be a whole bunch of those type of moments.
We're used to that, though, in D.C., Jordan. Now, we've seen a lot of that kind of stuff. That's not new.
Yeah. There's going to be a whole bunch of, man, what was he thinking type of throws that does end up working out in his favor. And that's something that he did have in his time in Minnesota. But, I mean, he's always going to regress back to the mean. And even if he does have some type of hot streak, he's always going to show why he has been a journeyman quarterback to this point. But there's going to be a bunch of highs and lows, I will say that. But with Case Keenum, it's something that the Vikings did a good job of, is that you have to have guys that have a wide catch radius with him because he's going to make life really hard on receivers on the perimeter just because he's not known as being that super pinpoint accurate type of guy. So if Josh Dotson is able to stay healthy, he's going to have to show off that catch radius that he did show coming into the draft. So if he's able to stay healthy, they're going to need Josh Dotson and that wide catch radius. Paul Richardson has to step up to stay healthy this year too. So they're going to have to find guys that are natural separators. And that's why I alluded to getting A.J. Brown, because he's a guy that can create that separation. And you have to have guys that have that wide catch radius because Case is not the most accurate type of quarterback. And he's just going to run around. He's going to do his thing. He's going to have a bunch of what-the-heck moments, but there's going to be some highs and lows. That's the best way I can explain it. With Case Keenum, this buckle up is going to be a wild ride.
I think Josh Doxson is the opposite of a natural separator, though, is the problem.
Well, look, all Jordan was saying is basically we need Jesus, and that's okay with me because I don't mind needing some help from a higher power. Tell you that much.
We need to move on, though. You know, you mentioned in your Redskins podcast that about the loss of Preston Smith. My goodness, you know, obviously Preston Smith has moved on, and so we need edge rushers. At least we need an edge rusher fairly desperately. So other than the obvious, which is Montez Sweat, possibly Brian Burns would be one, you know, at 15. Give us some edge rushing candidates that you think might be a fit in maybe rounds 2 or 3 beyond the obvious.
Yeah, and I mean, the best thing for the Redskins is that every position that they do need help at, I think this draft class is really strong in. And you already mentioned the top flight guys like Brian Burns, Montez Sweat, which are the typical names.
Yeah, they're probably gone by 15 anyway at this point, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think so. But then you're getting into the second-tier guys like LJ Collier, DeAndre Walker, and even the Christian Miller. So, and even a guy like Chase Winovich. So they're going to have their pick of the litter in that second round. It's just a matter of which guys they see as the best scheme fit for them. And I think all of those guys would be worth a second or even a third round pick. But Christian Miller is a guy that I really do like out of Alabama. but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy to this point. But he shows that being that you love to see. And, I mean, he's every bit of 6'4", 250 pounds. He has those long arms that you're looking for. But, again, it just goes back to the injury situation with him. And if he's able to stay healthy, I think he could turn into an 8 to 10 sack a year type of edge rusher. But it's just a matter of how healthy he can stay throughout the year.
It sounds like Christian Miller has it all for the Redskins. He's injury prone and he's from Alabama. That's everything the Redskins look for.
Those are our favorite things. Well, one guy who I did some very amateurish scouting. I'm not by any means an expert, but we needed to write something about edge rushers at one point, and I got stuck with it.
You're welcome, Alex.
Yes, but one guy I kind of came away initially liking was Ferguson, but he got uninvited to the combine, and he had a really off pro day, it sounded like. Where do you think he's going at this point? Because I love his raw speed, and I feel like he's got a lot of raw talent, but obviously, the last 2 months or so have not been good to him.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really hard to project where he's going to go right now because, I mean, coming into the combine, I probably thought he was going to be an early day 2 type of selection. I thought the first round team was a bit too rich for him, even though his production has been off the charts. I mean, he can operate with his hand in the dirt or from a stand-up position, so he has that versatility that you're looking for, especially in the Redskins defensive front that does incorporate, that 3-4 scheme for the most part, but they like to run a variety of different types of fronts. So with Jalen Ferguson, he's able to fit right in with that, but I think he's a guy along with, now it hasn't been as bad as Ja'Kai Polite's pre-draft process has been, but I don't think he's helped himself a whole bunch just because of everything coming out at the combine and then with the bad pro day.
Yeah.
And it was just unbelievable how bad his 3-cone was. I really couldn't believe. I thought it was a typo or something. But, I mean, he has that production. That's something that he's going to have in his back pocket to be able to hang his hat on. So I think he still probably would go maybe mid to late day 2. I think that's a fair range for him.
Okay. You don't think he dropped into the 3rd or 4th or anything yet with all that?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so.
Hey, this is totally off script here, but this has been going through my head for a while. I don't quite understand why Preston Smith got such a huge contract and why the NFL views him in a way that I think most Redskins fans don't. When we saw Preston Smith, we saw a history of inconsistency in a guy who never could quite get home to the quarterback on a regular basis, and yet he gets a gigantic contract from Green Bay. What do you see in Preston Smith? I don't know if you've watched him or not. I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I don't know him as much in depth as you guys, but just from an outside looking in, I've had a really well-respected perception of him. And, I mean, just look at the numbers now. I don't know his exact statistics, but just coming from that 2015 draft class, I mean, he was one of the better edge rushers in that class along with Daniil Hunter. Those guys are really highlighted as being the 2 best from that class. And, I mean, I think it just comes down to a matter of supply and demand. And he was a guy that was in demand, and the supply really wasn't that high, even though this is a really good draft class coming in. Edge rushers are going to always be in large demand just because of how well or how little of them it is throughout the league. So I think he just fell into the right situation at the right time, and I think that's why he got a huge contract.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you. I'm sorry. I apologize. But
You're good, man.
Okay, one more. We know we want to be respectful of your time. We know you've got some other commitments coming up. One last thing here in terms of draft, and I won't deviate. The Redskins obviously signed Landon Collins, who's, in I think everybody's view, certainly the best safety on the Redskins roster, but he's really more of a in the box, strong safety in like a cover 3 scenario. So the Redskins, I think, desperately need a rangy free safety who can play that backside. Give us a few guys who might fill that role from this draft class.
Yeah, well, there's one I absolutely love. He's from Maryland. His name is Darnell Savage, and I'm a huge fan of him. He reminds me a lot of LaMarcus Joyner coming out of Florida State. He can play not only that one high situation, but he also can play whether that's nickel, outside corner, or even in the slot. So now he makes his money on the roof of the defense. He can come downhill. He flies downhill. He loves to come down and run support. And that's something that's really hard to find and something we haven't really seen since Earl Thomas's days at Texas. And I'm not saying he's going to be that type of player during his career, but as far as a run supporter coming down from one eye as a safety on the roof, I think he is able to do that. And then he has really fluid hips, real loose hips. He's very comfortable in pass coverage. He has that sideline to sideline range that you're looking for from a single high safety. And, I mean, that's been evident in his production when he was at Maryland. So Darnell Savage is one guy that I absolutely love, and I think he would be a perfect fit in that Redskins secondary if they're looking for that rangy free safety.
So is Savage? Where do you think Savage is projected to come out or be picked in this draft?
I have him as one of the guys at the top of my board for the second round. I think that highly of Darnell Savage. Now, I don't think he's going to go that high. I think he'll probably be a late second round or early third round type of guy, but whoever gets him in that range is going to get an absolute steal. I mean, I think he's an absolute stud.
Okay, so I think the Redskins have 2 third-round picks. Actually, we got the first pick in the third round, I believe, don't we?
No.
No. Yeah, we don't have the. Yeah. One more. Talk to us a little bit about Talk to us a little bit about Juan Thornhill from Virginia. I thought, to me, he seems like another pretty decent free safety type of candidate.
Yeah, I mean, he played everything from linebacker to free safety to strong safety, and a guy that's a proven winner. He was a 5-time state champion in high school. He won it 3 times in basketball and 2 times in football. So he has that championship pedigree that you're looking for, standout basketball player. And if you go and watch his basketball highlights from high school on YouTube, I mean, they're absolutely amazing. And the way he at the combine, he plays exactly like that. He was a hot flyer at Alta Vista High School in Virginia. And he played linebacker, he played free safety, he played strong safety. He was just a jack of all trades in that Cavalier defense. So I think he's another guy that could be a fit. And he's a guy you can plug and play anywhere along your secondary. And that's the great thing, like Savage, that these guys aren't just playing single high on the roof. They can fill a multitude of positions on the back end of the defense.
Well, it's a 10 out of 10, fellas, man. I'm not going to lie to you, Jordan. We really appreciate all the knowledge that you gave us on these guys and the information that you shared with us. It was great having you on, man. I personally, I'm pretty sure the whole group feels this way, but we would love in the future to possibly have you back on. But again, we thank you for joining us for this brief moment in time.
No problem. I just, thank you guys. And anytime you want to have me on, just let me know. Also, I just want to let you guys know about my draft guide.
I was just about to. Yeah, I didn't want to leave that hanging. I wanted to let you get that opportunity to plug everything in, man, because you're doing a good thing for it.
I appreciate that. And the pre-order purchase link is actually tagged on my Twitter page. That's at JReidNFL. That's at JREID. NFL, you'll also be donating to a good cause. The draft guide is actually $10, and all the proceeds from it will be going to a charity called the Raleigh Rise Against Hunger Foundation in Raleigh, North Carolina.
All right, sounds like a great cause.
Yeah, for sure. And also, Jordan, if there's anything else that we forgot to plug in outside of the draft guide early on, but if there's anything else that you'd like to plug in, just go ahead and this is your opportunity. That's all good.
So you can find my work on cover1.net, also climbingthepocket.com, and you can also follow my podcast. It's called the Draft Board Podcast. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, every single podcast platform. So make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review.
Oh, look, one more thing.
You can't let him go, can you?
I can't. You got Kirk Cousins on this team, man. I need to figure out how he felt after that first year. I need to know right before we let you go. How was that first year for you, man? Was it rough?
I mean, it was exactly what I expected because I actually followed Kirk Cousins really closely when he was in Washington. And the big thing I always was cautious about with Kirk Cousins is that he didn't show up in the big moments, and he just didn't rise to the occasion. And that's something that held true even in his first year with the Vikings. And he's another quarterback that is only going to be as good as the sum of his parts. And with that offensive line, he just didn't have any chance behind it. And the Vikings bought an expensive car, and they just didn't have the money to pay for the utilities once it started to break down. And that's the best way to describe what happened with the Minnesota Vikings last year. But I think with Diggs and Thielen and Dalvin Cook, and then having that chemistry for another year, if they're able to build up that offensive line, I think he'll have another successful year. I think the biggest thing that he needs to show, though, is that he has to show up in big games. And even in Washington, that's something that really did hinder him. So I think that's the biggest thing that Kirk Cousins needs to prove to everybody going forward.
To that I say, good luck, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely gonna be a long season for us. So I don't wish that upon anybody else. I don't. But again, we're not gonna hold you. We understand you got to go, man. Jordan, you've been great, bro. I appreciate you.
Yes, thanks very much, Jordan.
And we're back. That was Steve and Jamal and Alex with Jordan Reid. And give me your top level thoughts from that interview, guys. It seemed like it went really well.
I mean, my top level thought, Jordan, first of all, I loved him. Thanks for joining us. And by his draft guide, he gave you the details there at the end of the interview. Jordan's really good. I guess my top level thought here is that the very first thing he thought of when we asked him about round one was Cody Ford. He's recognizing the idea that left guard is a crisis situation. And so he raised the thought of Cody Ford. I think I would put Jordan in the camp of build the team up and then find the quarterback later. I guess Jamal, is that kind of how you viewed him?
Yeah, that's how I view it too. I had mentioned that I think either last week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah, just I think that would be the better route to be able to not spend a early round pick on a quarterback. You can build that offense up and surround them with some help.
Yeah, he's a Haskins guy, so he has Haskins rated as a number one quarterback. But I think he views Ford. If you guys don't know, was actually a tackle in college, but the idea here is that he's probably not athletic enough to play tackle in the NFL, and so the prevailing wisdom is that Ford is going to be moved inside, sort of like Brandon Scherf. And so the concept of having Trent Williams, Cody Ford, Chase Roullier, Brandon Scherf, Morgan Moses is sort of high-level offensive line stuff there, and so that's what he's seeing. He likes Will Grier. You caught that. Of the non-top quarterbacks, he's kind of a Will Grier guy. He did talk, quite a bit about Will Grier. He's not a Brett Rippon fan necessarily. I know a lot of you guys out there like Brett Rippon. I think primarily because of his last name.
Sticker shot.
Yeah, I mean Rippon just doesn't have the arm. He just doesn't have arm talent. Great story, nice guy. Love the name.
He does feel though that if he can get him some help. Of course, like that's going to be a lot of quarterbacks, but he feels like he's the one out of the many mid-round quarterbacks that we discussed. He's the one that's going to need that talent around him to look.
Yeah, and I think he sort of said the same thing for Grier too. Grier's a guy who can do it, but he needs the talent around him. I think if you can read between the lines of what Jordan was saying here, it's the top three guys, and he's not the only one who said this. Marino said this too. We said it. The only three quarterbacks in this draft who can have franchise level ability, who can maybe take a team over, are Haskins, Murray, and they think Drew Lock. And again, that's not a revelation, but of the mid-tier guys, Grier is next on his board. He's not a Daniel Jones fan. I'm not a Daniel Jones fan particularly either. I don't quite get the fascination. What is do you guys know? Help me out. What is I don't get the Redskins' fascination with Daniel Jones at all. I'm sorry, I don't.
I was hoping you could tell me.
Well, there's like 3 or 4 quarterback gurus on that Redskins staff. One of them happens to be the head coach. So my opinion and guess would be that there's probably a couple out there that likes Daniel Jones in their evaluations, and it also just so happens that a lot of people see the scheme fit, that it may work for Daniel Jones to come to the Redskins, and that would be my opinion. I don't know if everybody loves him, but I feel like there's a couple out there who will probably try and make a case for him when the time comes. And I pray to God that he is not the one that gets overdrafted. And I pray that the team that does the overdrafting is not the Redskins.
Yeah, I mean, he looks the part, Sean. He looks like he fell out of the quarterback factory. He's an intangibles guy. You keep hearing about his intangibles. He's got great leadership ability. I can't remember
Probably really smart.
Yeah, I mean he's a Duke, so he's probably a smart guy. Yeah, I think it was it Jordan or Joe Marino who mentioned that people have compared him to Tim Tebow.
Oof! Ouch!
Ouch!
I don't remember the Tebow comparison.
Okay,
with Marino, so
yeah.
It may have been.
Maybe I'm dreaming this, but in terms of those guys, but he has been, in terms of intangibles, he's a leader, and and Drew Lock. I've heard the same thing about Drew
Right.
Lock. To me,
sounds like a nice way of saying he's not that great on the field.
If you watch him on the field, and you watch his film, and you watch Duke games, which I have, he's mediocre. He does not impress me. He's not a terrible quarterback. He doesn't do a whole lot of things wrong. His receivers are horrible. They dropped a lot of balls on him. But he doesn't wow you in any respect. He's got an okay arm. He doesn't have a wow arm. He's fairly accurate in some respects. But on the other hand, Duke is playing teams with horrible defenses, and those receivers are running free in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I would be okay if you draft a guy like Daniel Jones in like the 3rd or 4th round or something. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But he's a classic guy that because he's smart, he's got the intangibles, out there. And let's face it, NFL coaches have egos and always think they can coach guys up. He's the classic, him and Drew Lock too, but probably Jones more. He's the classic overdraft situation because they take all those intangibles and go, we can fix all his problems, So that's
no party problem. He's got no off the field issues too. I can see that being a huge boost to a guy.
I don't think he's got those kind of issues.
Yeah, so that's what the appeal is. He's a smart guy. He's got a good foundation, and he's not screwing around. I get the appeal, although you're right. It sounds like classic reach and overdraft situation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and Jordan, Jamal, you asked Jordan about Tyree Jackson. I'm a Tyree Jackson fan. And Jordan mentioned that he's got a long way to go. The thing that concerned me most about what Jordan said about Jackson is that he said he's very slow in processing coverages. Okay, I mean I get it when you're talking about the pros, young rookies in the pros, but Jackson's in college playing at Buffalo, and Jordan said that
he's slow.
And for Sean's benefit, because I know you weren't on the interview, Jordan is a quarterback. He was he was a college quarterback. He knows quarterbacking, awesome. And that's the thing that worries me most about Tyree Jackson. Now, I mean, people have talked about moving him to other positions, and quite frankly, I think some of that is racial, bias. Because you got a lot of times black quarterbacks, they automatically look at them as athletes and not quarterbacks, and Lamar Jackson suffered from that, and I think Tyree's getting some of that too because he's black. If you don't know. Out there. So
what are they saying? The wide receiver for him?
Yeah, I mean that's
quick. Tight end mainly. 6'7", like 250.
And I just think that's not fair, and that's big. We need to move beyond that, people. It's okay to be a quarterback of you can have zebra stripes if you want, as long as you can play. But
that's more than okay.
But that's what worried me about what Jordan said about Tyree is this processing speed. If he's having trouble at Buffalo, that doesn't bode well for the NFL, and that's what worries me about Tyree Jackson. Jamal, what else did he?
That's fair.
Yeah, I actually agree, and I think one of the things he mentioned as well, just to add on the Tyree Jackson thing, it's kind of interesting in a sense because we feel like there's 2 quarterbacks, and it makes sense for Tyree too. It's kind of interesting because you got Daniel Jones and you have Tyree Jackson, two people who one is going to be overdrafted because of his physical traits and the fact that he has a cannon for an arm, and he also runs like a 4.6, and that's Tyree Jackson. He's a great athlete for his size, and he also can throw the football very, very far, and he has a lot of power behind it. They feel like that's a project that's worth investing to pretty early, and they don't want nobody to snatch him later, so they'll probably overdraft him. And then you have a guy in Daniel Jones, like 2 quarterbacks. Now, I don't think Tyree is linked to the Redskins in any sense.
No, we've not.
But there are a lot of people. Yeah, there are a lot of people who in the fan base that really likes him. And then you have Daniel Jones. I'm sorry, another guy who has the potential to be overdrafted, all because of his pedigree in terms of who he came from. Cutcliffe is the quarterback whisperer on the college level. He's talked to Eli Manning and Peyton Manning. He's coached them through things. So a lot of people they value that. And he's something that people are going to want to be interested in. And I hope just for anybody's sake, that they don't do that. In terms of overdrafting him, like make it make sense. Second, third round, that's fine for him. But yeah, just it's that overdrafting thing is interesting, and I just hope the Redskins stay away from that.
Although they have a history of that, they overdrafted Jason Campbell.
Yes,
they
and it's not even limited to the quarterback position. You got Fabian Moreau, Monte Nicholson, Troy Apke is the prime overdrafted guy. Like, what was his college resume that told you he needed to be drafted in the 4th round?
Nothing. He has athletic.
Absolutely nothing.
He's fast. That's it.
Yeah. So yeah, they have a history of doing that. I completely agree. Something else that he's talked about. He mentioned what's his name? Case Keenum. I'm sorry, I dropped his name for a minute. But Case Keenum, because a lot of people don't understand, like, if we're not able, and we'll talk about Josh Rosen soon, but if we're not able to land like a promising young guy, because we know we're going to get a quarterback, but it just depends on who we get. If we're not able to, get that type of quarterback this year, you have to take into account that Jordan Reid has seen Case Keenum up and close, and he's also a Vikings fan. He's able to watch every single game that Case Keenum played up until that championship game. And you're in a situation here where, as it stands, the Redskins they really have no help on the perimeter at the receiver position. And you're looking at Josh Doxson, and a bunch of unproven guys. Josh already proved himself to be, at the very least, a serviceable number 3 at the moment. But when you deal with Case Keenum and a guy who's going to take a lot of chances for guys who cannot separate from the football, from the defender downfield, they struggle in their route running and route separation and stuff like that. It's going to be hard watching Case Keenum play for 16 games. Presumably 16 games, because I don't think he's going to lose a quarterback competition.
Probably not. And remember, that Jordan. Jordan talked about Case and mentioned and specifically identified him as a bridge quarterback. But I think Jordan's sort of view on Case is he can be competent for a year or two. He can be competent. He's not going to be anybody's franchise quarterback, but he can hold the fort down if necessary. And that was kind of Jordan's point with it. I definitely think that it's not the time to overdraft, for sure. But let's see.
To be honest, if he plays the whole year, this might be Jay Gruden's last year. To be honest with you, I don't think it's going to work. In the sense that he'll probably produce 6 to 7 more wins, 6 to 7 wins again. In terms of Case at the quarterback position, this will probably be another 6 to 7 win team. But again, this is all pre-draft talk. We never know. But yeah, sorry, I just had to insert that. I don't know how good he'll be able to do this year with the type of roster that we have to help him.
Yeah, it's gonna clarify real quick though. Once the season starts, do we want to talk about Rosen?
Yeah, let's do. That was Jordan Reid, so thanks to him for coming on the show. He was great.
Awesome guy.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a poll question. You want me to do the poll?
Yes. The poll. Let's do the poll.
Return to the polls, and you guys can thank Jamal for bringing it up and shaming me into doing polls again.
Thank you, Jamal.
So this week's poll was this. What's the max that you would want the Redskins to spend in a trade for Josh Rosen?
Yeesh.
The 4 choices, because again, Twitter's limited to 4 choices. Here are the 4 choices. Trade the 15th pick plus a package of other picks for him. Trade the 15th pick but nothing else. Trade the 2nd or the 3rd but no higher than that. Or don't trade him, don't get him at any cost. And we got a ton of votes. This was end up being one of our more popular polls, and we got a lot of comments on this one. So thanks to everybody who participated. But let's talk about first of all, what's your opinion? What do you think the voting public voted for in this? So let's start with Sean this week. Sean, what do you think?
So just to clarify, it's trade the 15th?
Well, it's trade the 15th plus a package, meaning go all out to get whatever you need to do to get him. Trade
a 2nd or 3rd round pick?
Or trade 15 alone. Just swap, here's first round pick. 2nd or 3rd round, something like that. That's kind of like the package, whatever. And then just, we don't want him, don't get him, period.
Man, I I don't know what people think about stuff. I'm going to say a sizable people said both don't get him or trade a second or third, I guess, is what I'm going to guess. I'm really going to hope no one said go all out.
Okay.
And I would probably myself say don't get him, but we can go into the reasons for that once we go through the poll.
All right. Jamal, what do you think?
Well, I already know the answer.
Oh, you do?
So,
okay, well, what's your view then? Don't give away the answer.
Yeah, I saw that. So, yeah, my view, because I voted, I said second or third. So basically, I saw the options. I think that you can get Rosen for a second and another pick, but if you can finesse it in a way where you can do a second round or pick this year and a pick next year, then that works too. So. But yeah, anything other than a first.
This poll was actually a runaway.
Wow.
70% of the voting public voted for trade a second or third, but no more.
70% to trade a second or third. Wow.
18%.
Why do people want this guy?
Well, 18% were in the trade the 15th pick, but nothing else category.
Are you what?
I just you're not gonna like my opinion, Sean. Let me finish the poll here though. 7% voted for don't get him at any cost, and then 5% minority opinion voted to go all out for him. Trade the 15th plus whatever you need to do. We got a ton of comments. I can't read all these, but we will sample through a few comments here. Just your average fly guy, who is a normal, regular responder to these polls, said the max for me is a first this year and a second next year. That doesn't mean that doesn't mean that it's what I'd offer up front to Arizona. I firmly believe if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a team. Even if we had to trade a first and a second next year, that's way less than what we'd part with to move up for a quarterback. So that's his opinion.
So he said a first
and a
this
second
year,
next year.
Second next.
And a second next year.
Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but nah.
Dave, who is at WSK Rules, is another regular with these polls. He said, I'd certainly explore moving the 15th pick and the comp pick in the third for Rosen and Arizona. His comments got some grammatical errors there, but he's basically saying he's in the number one category also. Some guy named Rick Rogers at Disco Q chimed in. Former Hog Sty, member of It's Just Business. He said it's idiot. He wrote his opinion was it's idiotic to think that if he's your guy that you don't do what you need to do to go get him. So he's another one who's in the trade a first plus other picks category. Let's see here.
I think that reasoning can harm a lot of GMs. Like in the sense that if you can protect your assets, like just like if this is your guy, you go up to get him. Okay, cool. But if there's a certain level of doubt based on what you've seen from him. Now I'm not saying Rosen is a terrible quarterback. I think he can be good. Circumstances didn't help him last year, but when you go that hard for a quarterback who's already been out here for a year, you're better off. You're better off looking in the draft.
Not all these comments were in that vein. Here's one that wasn't. This is Michael Armstrong, who is he is at Coach_Daddy. He writes, I'm not sold on Rosen being the answer to our franchise quarterback woes, but I'm intrigued enough to give up a second and possibly another lower round pick. We have too many holes to give up 15. So that was his opinion.
Yes.
See, these comments broke into a whole bunch of other side comments. I'm trying to sort through on the fly here also.
Naturally. I don't know. I keep sorting, but I don't get this, guys. I don't get the inclination to
what the 70%.
Yeah, I don't get the inclination to give up.
The 70% didn't. The 70% didn't really chime in the comments, to be honest. Here's one that's a little bit off the beaten path. This is PJ Cumberland at Skinsaholic. He says was thinking the 2020 first round pick, which could be conditional on playing time, and a swap of 2019 third round picks. I like to dream big. So those are some of the comments. Thanks everybody who participated.
And I feel like you are dreaming.
My opinion of this thing is that I would be willing to give up a first-round pick for him, the 15th pick. I would not be willing to give up a whole big package of other stuff, but Just flipping the number 15 to him, I think I'd do it. Obviously, you don't want to start with that. You want to get him for lower, but if we had to, I think I would do it.
What are you thinking there? Because, look, I'm not saying he's bad, but it's what in his 1 year sample size made you be like, oh, that's got to be the guy. I mean, this guy did not – he was brutally bullied the entire season. I understand that by pressure, but still, he didn't handle it well.
Arizona had the worst offensive line in football.
Yep, that's true.
He was brutalized. The offensive coaching staff was terrible, got fired halfway through the season. Literally at like week 7, I believe they were gone. The plays they were calling did not help this guy whatsoever. Okay.
Yeah, but when it's like that, how can you know what you got even enough to give up a 15th?
Well,
pick?
because I watched him in college. In college, this dude looked at UCLA. He was the most pro ready to me. He doesn't have a huge arm. He does not have a Jeff George arm, but he's got a good arm. I thought he read the field really well. He can make all the throws. Yeah, he's got a bit of an attitude problem, but he's not nearly the first to have an attitude problem. He's to me, see, if we trade for him, his guaranteed money goes away, okay? And so if you trade for him, what you get is a guy on about a $2 million contract that can be cut. And he's not going to be a huge cap hit. He's not going to tie up millions and millions and millions of dollars for years. So it's a pretty good gamble in terms of salary cap. And I think he does have enough potential. I just can't underscore enough to me how awful the Arizona Cardinals offense was. And if you watch him, and there's a guy out there called Strong Opinion Sports on YouTube, and I credit him for pointing this out first. Josh Rosen last year, and I've watched a little bit of him, but not as much as this guy has. He's consistently late in his reads, and normally he makes the right read, but he's just having trouble getting to the right read quickly enough, and that resulted in a lot of incompletions because by the time he throws the ball, the window is kind of closing, and that was a lot of the reason why he missed when he missed. To me, that's a coaching issue and an experience issue. If you give him a solid offensive line with Trent Williams, with a decent left guard, with all that stuff, a decent running game, because Arizona didn't have a running game last year either. They had Larry Fitzgerald and nobody, and if we've got Darius Geis and AP who together can produce a high-quality running game, you get a wide receiver in the draft, all of a sudden you have some weapons around him, you have coaches. The Redskins coaches know how to scheme guys open. Okay, look at my Josh Doxson breakdown out there, and I showed you on film how they scheme people open. Arizona did none of that last year, none of that. So I think if you put Rosen in the right situation, he has the inherent natural talent and ability to succeed. And that's the whole trick for him. So do I want to give up a first-round pick for him? Of course not. I'm just saying if you can get a guy with that much potential on a dirt cheap contract with no guaranteed money, I'd give up a first for it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I hear all the points you're making. They're very well made. It's just still a lot to give up for someone who is a high upside question mark. So all your points are fair, though.
Yeah, my cap off is at a second or third, or a combination of picks under the first round. So, I agree with you, Sean. Steve made some fair points, but I just can't. I got a limit with my max for Rosen at this point.
That's fair enough. And listen, it's also, let's be said that I'm still not convinced Arizona's going to actually trade him. Okay, I mean they might. I mean they have a new coach and Cliff Kingsbury and all that. I get that, but this strikes me as classic draft smokescreen too. We might trade him, get your bids in now, while you can.
Trust nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm not necessarily even sold they're going to trade him, because it's entirely possible Kingsbury looks at Rosen and goes, I can run my offense with him, because by the way, they're letting him they've got, workouts start here, like this week, you're coming up, and they're going to let Rosen show up at workouts, without trading him. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not convinced any of this is even worth talking about. And certainly I hear you guys. I mean, I wouldn't want to trade a first for him either. I'm just saying, if you can get a shot at a franchise quarterback for the first round pick, because this guy, I had him, a lot of people had him as the top or second or third pick in the draft last year. And if you look at his numbers are kind of in the ballpark of Sam Darnold and Josh Allen. In spite of everything that happened to him, his numbers were on a par roughly with them, and both those two guys are hailed as heroes with the Jets and the Bills. Rosen isn't, which is fine. Root for you who you want to root for, but I'd just because of the contract primarily. I'd give him. I'd take the risk because his contract is so favorable. That's the
You're
big
a contract guy.
Well, I mean, it's if you have a contract where it's not going to impose a huge cap penalty, that's a benefit. You're taking a shot on a guy that you wouldn't normally get at such a low price. So that's all. So
It's fair. It's fair. Points well made.
I'm in the minority, though. Listen, I mean, most people don't agree with me, and I realize that. And I certainly wouldn't offer that up front. I'd probably, offer them a third-round pick, at the end of the day. Because if they wait till the bitter end, and it's like the Wednesday before the draft, I mean, you're going to draft Kyler and still not have Rosen traded, really? And so you throw them a pick and see if they take it,
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah. I'm not saying, and believe me, I'm not saying let's go all out and RG3 it, and trade away the future, and I'm not saying that in any way. And there's tons of holes, and yes, absolutely. But a shot at a franchise quarterback at a value contract, young guy who can improve, I'd do it. Particularly with Jay, who's and I also think that Rosen is a perfect fit for Jay's offense. Okay, I think if you can improve his release time, which you can get there through experience and coaching, he's a classic pocket guy. He's not really much of an athlete by NFL standards. He's not going to run around. He's not going to. He's not Cam Newton, RG3, Kyler Murray. But what he does have is quick release. Stand in the pocket, read the field. If you can get him to that point, it's worthwhile.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to think. I'm just thinking back to last year of how everybody went down, and then what's-his-face came in, and he was much quicker on his feet, and it seemed like it added a much-needed dynamic to our team. Of course, that fell apart right away. But that's what I think when I hear classic pocket guy, reads the field well, takes his time. I'm like, I don't know.
What do you think?
Is this team built for that?
Yeah, but, think about what Drew Lock and Daniel Jones are.
Yeah,
they're not runners. I mean,
Nope.
Locke more than
You're
Jones, but the athlete is Kyler Murray, and the Redskins aren't getting Kyler Murray. Like him, love him or not, and I have my reservations about Kyler Murray, believe me, but they're not getting him. So there's Tyree Jackson is an athlete. They could get him, but we're talking about him in the mid rounds, and so I mean, in terms of starter next year, you're not going to get too many guys with a ton of athleticism out of this year's draft.
Yeah.
Other than Murray.
That's totally fair. So how are you guys feeling then? Temperature check at this point of the offseason, knowing that we're a little under 3 weeks away from the draft. So that's going to change everything. But how are you guys feeling so far with all of these rumors circulating with the state of the team and who we've picked up so far? Temperature check on the offseason.
So I it's crazy because I actually was just talking about that yesterday. While I made a comment. So basically, I feel like at this point, and I think I need to put pen to paper too as well and write on this.
Got to stew on it a little bit.
But I feel like the Redskins to this point have done essentially nothing to address their major holes on the team. And yes, I'll point out that they did sign a safety. It doesn't matter if he was already interested, so it made it easier. It doesn't matter if the Redskins overpaid. Point is that they did address one issue that helps this team for at least the foreseeable future, at least 3 years. Time will tell if he's able to live up to that contract and stay beyond the 3 years, of the true value of that contract. But they signed a safety in Landon Collins. That worked out well. Then you sign Eric Flowers, who's he's not pegged as a starter right now. He's pegged as a project because he's not playing tackle for us. He's going to be moving inside into the interior, and nobody knows if he's going to be able to start yet. So that's a question mark. Then you look at Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. I personally like him, but at the same time, we don't know how good he is right now. Again, I like him, but you don't know anything about him just yet. We do have issues at the cornerback position, given that we don't have the necessary depth. Last year you had I can't even remember his name at this point, but last year you had the guy on the outside who constantly got burnt for about 40. No, not Scandrick. He got cut. It was a young guy, like a rookie. I think he was a rookie at the time. Maybe Johnson. It was definitely a rookie though, but he was getting beat. Same guy who got beat for 40 yards in the Cowboys home game for a touchdown when we were playing really well against the Cowboys offense. But point is, you have question marks at cornerback because you don't know the depth level and if these young quarterbacks are even ready. I have faith in Rogers Camarda to come in and compete well and play well. Quentin Dunbar, you don't really know necessarily how good he is until he starts playing on the football field. He says he's fine, but he's not playing in a football game. You don't know how long that shin is going to hold up for him. Josh Norman, we know how underwhelming he is.
Up and down,
yeah, linebackers still need help there. You didn't go out and sign anybody. You're hoping Reuben Foster clears, his issues. And we know the extent in which he's not done yet with anything with the NFL. So, you have the interior offensive line, secondary, inside linebackers. You're not sure how they're going to play. Sean Deion Hamilton, he's a guy, he's played a few games, but can you really say that he's the person that's going to come in and be that number 2 linebacker for the Redskins? You can't really say that. Can't say that. And we already know the issue with the receivers. We know the issue with the receivers. Jordan Reid is barely healthy, and then you got 2 injured running backs on your team, and Chris Thompson and Darius Geis. So I'm not trying to make it be like a Debbie Downer. I'm just simply saying. Yeah, I'm just simply saying to this point, they've done nothing to address the needs. And it seems like they're going to go into the draft and do what they can, but they're still going to come out with holes in some spot that still will be a problem for the foreseeable future until they can address it again next year.
I'm going to endorse what Jamal said in terms of personnel. I know we're running out of time, so I'm not going to repeat what he said, but my temperature check with him is kind of a broader issue. I'm not sure what's going on in the front office, and that causes me to question everything. Because Bruce Allen is basically saying, "Don't worry, everything's fine. We're going to compete this year." Kind of same thing he always says. We know Jay Gruden's going into his, the most important year. He's, it's kind of what's the term, the lame duck year. He's sort of going into a lame duck year. We've heard the stories about him kind of being detached, from the team a little bit this year. To me, no matter who they, and I think Jamal's basically right about the personnel stuff he's saying. And to me, I can't give him too big of a good of a grade because I'm just not sure that even the front office believes this team is really going to compete. And I think we're kind of being lied to a little bit. What they truthfully need to do, and I said this at the beginning of the offseason, what they really need to do is rebuild the entire organization. And instead what we're getting is, don't worry, nothing to see here, move along, we're going to be fine. Look, we signed, here's your shiny new toy, Landon Collins, we signed him, And so I'm just kind of getting the sense it's more of the same nonsense. And for that reason, I just can't get too amped up over things.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's a question mark through the whole organization from management and leadership on down to the people on the field. There's a lot of projects. There's a lot of unproven talent. We're talking about picking up more. It's another tough year to predict at this point. But, hey, a couple weeks away from the draft. Have a really good one, and this could all change.
Yep.
All right, cool. Well, like you said, we are running up against it with the interview. So anything else going on in your lives you want to get out there before we let people go for another week?
No, not for us. Not on my part, at least. Listen to the other shows, please. We've got good written content coming up. Watch Game of Thrones. Watch Game of Thrones.
Watch Game of Thrones.
Please.
Oh, good call.
I don't want to beg. I don't want to sound like a beggar, but I'm just asking.
I'll beg.
If you made it this far, just leave us some reviews. Help us out. If you appreciate our content, we appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. I'm glad you said that, Jamal. I couldn't have said it better because I was about to get on my knees and grovel, and you did it much more properly than I was going to. Leave us some reviews. Check us out. Steve's got It's Just Business on its 52nd episode, I think you said, right, Steve?
Yes, 52.
Awesome. 52 episodes, so beautiful. Make sure you're checking all that new content out on thehogsty.com. Other than that, we will see you all next week. Take care.